Hi guys, Ashley here. Today I'm bringing you one phenomenal guest, Daniel Dumbrill. He is the founder of Taps Brewpub. He also has been doing export and import in China and a lot of distribution for the past 12 years. In fact, more than 12 years, because for the past 12 years, he's been living in mainland China. Daniel, it's so phenomenal to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be on here. Thanks for having me.
I have discovered Daniel, unfortunately, just recently, and I have checked out his Twitter, I've checked out his YouTube channel, which has literally tens of thousands of followers. And Daniel is very vocal. He talks about, business in China. He talks about the daily realities in China, and he also comments quite a bit about the current situation when it comes to, US and China kind of standoff. So Daniel, I think my first question would be very appropriate if we talk about that topic very close to your heart, which is US China. Right now, the new media war has begun. Obviously, we are in this trade war, media war, kind of concept war. What is your take on what's actually going on?
Well, I feel like it doesn't feel like the U.S. is really trying to meaningfully engage with China. You look at, for example, I believe it's called the IPAC by Marco Rubio that he created, the Interparliamentary Association on China or something like that. It's a bunch of countries teaming up on China to hold China accountable for various things that they think China should be held accountable for, all while the founding country of this association just recently sanctioned the families of international court members who want to investigate war crimes in Afghanistan. So for me, the biggest thing why I wanted to talk about this was because just the hypocrisy was really annoying me. And what I think it's about is that China's come up on everybody really quickly. It's one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Second largest economy. By some measures, if you look at the PPP, in terms of how the GDP is expressed, in many ways, you can say it's exceeded the US in certain measurements. And I believe it's a matter of national security for the US to stay number one. So they've gone on this more of an attack rather than really trying to meaningfully engage with China.
What do you think the sentiment is in China? Because we all know that right now, that sentiment that, China is rising and China is becoming a country that needs to reclaim its position as the great civilization. It is back. And when previously China sort of ignored when others were somehow in some eyes perceived bullied around the world, like Chinese being bullied or discriminated or whichever way, right now Chinese feel very strongly about it. So what do you think is the sentiment when it comes to ordinary people in China when it comes to the US?
So ordinary people on the ground, I would say that probably the anti-China sentiment outside of China is way more strong than an anti-American sentiment in China. Sometimes people ask if I'm American, and they don't really ask in a condescending way. They're just excited to know where I'm from. I recently did a video where I did a Huizhou vacation, and I was on a scooter and I was zooming by, and there was a guy outside of a restaurant. I don't know if you know, sometimes they've got people outside of the restaurants around noontime trying to wave you to come in, saying, come in, come in. Yeah. And he looked at me and said, hey, USA, okay. Because he thought I was American. So people are still really friendly here. And it's created an interesting dynamic, because politicians in the U.S., they're not allowed to say anything positive about China. It's almost like a political suicide if you did something like that. So this more open-mindedness towards America from China, it's created a long-term, interesting dynamic where China and Chinese people can continually learn from America and learn the things that they like and that they dislike, but America cannot learn anything from China. And China's doing a lot of things right. And so what it's created is a situation where the American political system kind of seems stale in comparison to this ever-evolving system in China, which is ironic because it's supposed to be the other way around. And, you've got people like Eric Lee, who did a TED Talk, and he does different things where he talks about this too, where in China, you can't change the party, but you can change the policies. And in America, you can change the party, but you can't change the policies.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that they haven't really gone that extreme where they've become super anti-American or anything like that, because I think this is something great that they should preserve, is their ability to still look over there and say, oh, okay, you guys are doing this well. I think maybe we should look at doing something similar.
No, this is beautiful. And what do you personally feel China wants? Because when it comes to this fear that, China is this global enemy that is trying to capture everybody and convert everybody. And right now it is a biggest rival when it comes to the US in terms of economy, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people, I know a lot of Chinese people, just to give you a perspective, and they say, you know what, we're not here to convert anyone. This desire to convert is very Christian. Like Christians went around the world and they wanted to convert people. But we just want to, basically, we built the wall of China because we wanted to keep barbarians out. We didn't want to invade them and convert them. So basically, a lot of Chinese kind of jokingly say that, you know what, we want to establish ourselves as the obviously a power in Asia, as we were for 5,000 years, and we want to be respected, and we want to be a respected player in the international arena, but not necessarily go and capture and convert everybody. So what is your take? What does China want?
They just want to continue improving the lives of its people, really. I mean, they've raised hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It has one of the best upward momentum abilities from poverty into middle class. The wealth gap is still pretty well under control in terms of, you look at the Gini coefficient, it's better than the US's, which is getting, more and more extreme. It's at the highest, or at least a few years ago, it was at the highest it's ever been in 50 years. And, they can't be isolation. They can't really isolate themselves either. So they are looking for global influence as well. They're going out with their, Belt and Road initiatives and creating these cooperation packages with various countries, which people are saying are debt traps and things like that. But, it's like, give us a better option than this then, in the way. Prior to this, when Western powers are going into Africa, it's not with optional trade packages. It's with, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to take. They don't send doctors and road builders. They send soldiers with guns. And so I think they definitely don't want to isolate themselves again. I believe it was in the Qing dynasty when they just kind of closed themselves off and they said, we don't need the rest of the world. So they do want to have more cooperation around the world, but it's a very peaceful kind of a cooperation. And you can just compare that to what anybody else has done previous to China's rise.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to business, how do you think this current situation, because we all agree, I guess, that the situation and the relationships between US and China, and with US, obviously a lot of countries influenced by the US, I mean, that part of the world, right, the West, the relationships are probably at its historic low since 50 years ago, I guess. It must be the historic low. Do you think that will impact businesses on the ground or new businesses trying to do business in either country?
Well, we can already see that on the U.S. side. Obviously, the U.S. wants to try to stop Huawei's expansion, not only in their own country, but everywhere else. They're talking about a potential TikTok ban. And I mean, a lot of this goes down to them kind of, it seems like they're in panic mode. I don't think they really believe that the Chinese Communist Party is going to steal videos of people dancing to Justin Bieber. I think,
this might be a soft power weapon.
Who knows? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Justin Bieber did visit the Great Wall of China. But I think it's more about America losing influence and, their monopoly on global social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube and all this kind of stuff is very important to them. Because they do have censorship. They do have these things where they all of a sudden remove thousands of so-called Russian bots when they find out actually they were just real people and now Chinese bots. Or, when the situation happened in Iran around Soleimani, there were a lot of people who were removed off of Facebook and Twitter when they were talking about the incident and just giving a little bit of a different perspective in terms of Soleimani going on that the fact he was on a peace mission to meet with Saudi Arabia, which could have brought more peace and stability to the region. When people were talking about that, they were removed off of these platforms. And Facebook even had an official statement saying that they were removing people to comply with U.S. sanctions. Now, you imagine when some other platform that's not owned by the American companies anymore, when they're not able to do that anymore. So I think innovation will suffer because what Huawei is doing with 5G and the quality of their equipment and how much more efficient it is. It's actually a more expensive than some of the alternatives. But when you compare its performance to price kind of ratio, it actually works out cheaper when you really look at it that way. So it's gonna hurt innovation, and yeah, I think a lot of Chinese companies are going to be are going to suffer from this. On the American side, I think the propaganda is working. There are a lot of factories who are trying to or want to look at kind of reducing the reliance on China or moving factories out. You've got the Japanese government offering incentives to bring out certain companies, and it's just a weird thing because I mean the future consumer market is here in China, and you're just right as this amazing huge consumer market is growing here. That's when you're going to remove your factories out. When your factories all of a sudden could start working inwards with this country where it's located. It's just a weird situation. So I think everybody's gonna suffer from this kind of a trade war and increased escalations.
But the examples that you just now mentioned, I mean, I totally agree with them, but these are primarily big companies, somebody who's got factories built in China. These are big tech giants like Huawei, like ByteDance, etc. But what about some consumer products? Somebody who is, I don't know, manufacturing cosmetics in the US and right now wanting to sell in China, or somebody who is, probably Chinese companies working in the US will also be more careful. But what's your take on smaller businesses?
I'm not sure how it will affect them, but I'm almost thinking kind of like from a mental point of view, if Chinese companies see this happening to their big tech companies trying to set up, do things overseas, I wonder if it will create a situation where they feel like we're not welcome there. And then vice versa, all of these bigger companies, if there are bigger companies pulling out of China, if a smaller company thinks, okay, well, should I really be going there when everybody else is pulling out? Kind of everybody's moving with the herd. So I think maybe from a psychological point of view, it may impact people. Because, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think there are any specific barriers for smaller companies to do business in the other countries, but potentially from a psychological point of view.
Everything can happen, right? Will it happen? Is it likely to happen? That's a different question. I receive a lot of questions from, let's say, American companies, especially at times like this, and they basically say, okay, we understand that China has the biggest consumer market. E-commerce is obviously the largest in the world, this and that. But do local consumers still want to buy American products? So they keep asking, do they want to buy American products? And for me, the question is, okay, how is your product answering their needs? It's not just American. They will buy it if it's great quality. And what is your take on that?
I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I don't think Tesla sales are slowing down based on all of the new Teslas I've seen on the road. And, obviously they've set up their factories here and stuff like that. I haven't heard anything in terms of that. I don't know. Maybe there's some localized things online where people say, oh, we should boycott American products. But in practice, I'm not seeing that with everyday people on the ground. So I think it's still something, at the end of the day too, if somebody's going to come over here and open up a company, or if they're taking that route rather than just exporting their product. When I have my brew pub here and I'm running my brew pub, people don't look at it as, oh, this is a Canadian brew pub. It's totally a local company. I mean, I own it, but it's very welcoming in that from that point of view.
100%. Let's move on to the next question. Both of us, you and me, we both live in Hong Kong and lived in Hong Kong for a while. And right now, of course, this is a big topic for everybody. Hong Kong. What is the future of the city? It is a beautiful, harbor city. It has its finance. It used to have its common law that everybody was very happy. And right now, this national security law comes. And of course, there are a lot of questions on both sides. In Hong Kong, overseas, in mainland China, what is the future of Hong Kong? What is your take on that?
I mean, it really is saddening for me because it is such a beautiful city, and to see what's been happening over the last little while has really been sad to see. And there's a lot of people who say Hong Kong's been through a lot and it always bounces back. But I don't know if this time, because so many people are convinced, especially on the protester and rioter side, that China needs Hong Kong so much, and they're completely underappreciating the fact that China needs Hong Kong so much. The reason that so much FDI comes through, foreign direct investment comes through Hong Kong, and so many people open up companies in China from Hong Kong, is because it's one of the easiest places to open up a wholly owned foreign enterprise from in China. That's not a Hong Kong policy. That's a mainland policy. The fact that they started doing renminbi reforms in Hong Kong, that's not because of Hong Kong. That's because of the mainland. You know, shortly after handover, when George Soros tried to short the you know what out of the Hong Kong dollar, just like they did in for the Great British Pound, and like they did in Thailand and Malaysia, China came to the rescue, and they said, the premier said, we are going to back up Hong Kong with everything we've got. You know, but now you're starting to slowly see China kind of backing away from that a little bit. The first sign of that I saw was with the Greater Bay Area project. You know, a lot of every area like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Zhuhai, Zhongshan, they all had their specific specialties. For Hong Kong, it was finance and blockchain technology. And halfway through the kind of riots and the situation, China slowly and quietly said, okay, well, Shenzhen can do this also. It's no longer exclusively given to Hong Kong. So it does seem like there may be, if the mainland side just sees, okay, it's you know, a little bit beyond hope in some ways, maybe they're going to start to, you know, Hong Kong will start to lose some of these opportunities. And I don't think anybody who is on the pro-rioter or protester, whatever side that you want to, whatever you want to call them, really appreciates that point. The fact that Hong Kong's success relies on China. And the fact that Hong Kong was ever successful is because it was on the doorstep of China. So much more than China needs Hong Kong. China definitely does benefit from Hong Kong a lot, the mainland side, but there's very lack of a lack of appreciation from the Hong Kong side, in terms of at least people who are supporting what's going on.
And there's a lot of criticism coming also here in Hong Kong when it comes to, okay, we had, let's say, 20, 30 years. And in those 20, 30 years, we did not build any tech giants. We did not build, you know, a revolution. Basically, we had all the time in the world. We had the money. We had a really good party. But apart from having the traditional, okay, we have a port, we have finance people, we have some, you know, stock exchange, we have some qualified accountants and lawyers running around the city. Apart from all that, we have in many ways failed to transition into the modern age. And when we look at Singapore, if we look at Shanghai, or we look at Shenzhen, they have done a much better job. So right now, a lot of people are looking at it and saying, okay, service in Hong Kong is not that great. We still have a bit of finance. We still have qualified people and some lawyers. But at the end of the day, what's next for Hong Kong? In order to transition, some of them say that now is actually kind of a good time when it all cools down and people realize that in order to move ahead and be prosperous and have that upward mobility, they need to actually innovate, not just spin the same wheel again and again. So do you think, living here and being, you know, familiar with the place, that Hong Kong is truly ready to innovate and push forward? Or do you think that slowly and gradually it will be in decline before mainland China potentially, you know, picks it up and says, okay, I need a prosperous Hong Kong because, you know, it's still a good gateway overseas for mainland Chinese companies and basically support it?
I think for, you know, potentially waiting until it gets to the point where they say, uh-oh, you know, we really need China a little bit more, mainland China more than we thought. Maybe that's the way it will happen, because the only other way is for a real mindset change in Hong Kong, for really people to evaluate what's going on. Because, you know what, Hong Kong had enough political freedom in terms of, you know, the LegCo members and the district councillors, where if somebody was to propose a joint trade-free area where they, you know, China and Hong Kong built tech companies together on the border somewhere, you know, a joint control zone or something like that. There's so much of a negative sentiment that a lot of these youths are brought up with against mainland China, that there would be huge opposition to it. So while they just say, no, what do we, you know, we're, a lot of that sentiment is we're better than the mainland. So while they kept saying we're better than the mainland, we don't need them, we don't need this kind of a cooperation, Shenzhen's GDP has exceeded Hong Kong's now. And Shenzhen, like you said, is building some of these massive tech companies. So there needs to be a real kind of a look at the mindset in Hong Kong. And that needs to change first. The only other way is potentially, like you said, slowly realizing it after everything is kind of like, uh-oh, what do we do now? Yeah.
Mm. And what about mindset? Do you think it's education system? Do you think it's what's happening with, let's say living environment, because everybody is stuffed in a tiny little apartment and people do not have upward mobility? There's so many theories of why this mindset is truly cemented in young people's mind, why they believe that, everything coming out of mainland China is bad, and there's no reasoning and there's no kind of independent thinking in many, many ways, because it is just the given. Mainland is bad. We are better than mainland. And they came here, they're ripping us off, and they are making use of this city, etc., and there's no future and there's no freedom, and we need to fight. So that's a little bit what I'm getting from the young generation that is really in the previous months been out in the streets.
Yeah, I mean, the education system has a lot to do with it. I mean, if you look at some of the liberal art studies, the kinds of stuff that they teach mainland or teach the students about mainland, depicting the American national parks as these beautiful places, and Chinese places like these rivers that are dying and things like that. And then, of course, you have it's a far more open society in Hong Kong. You don't need a VPN to go out onto the open internet and things like that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the problems that come with it is when you have people like Joshua Wong, who are given a Netflix documentary and put on a pedestal by the West and turned into this superhero of sorts. This is what people are. These are the people that are becoming their superheroes, who have absolutely no kind of introspectiveness about taking a more measured approach to how to look at China, how to deal with China, how to work together with China. So, yeah, I think that there's an education issue, and then there's a continued indoctrination that continues afterwards into adulthood as well.
Talking about VPN, and this is the last question related to Hong Kong. Talking about VPN, do you think soon VPN will be needed in Hong Kong in order to access international sites, or I would still say for a couple of years? Your personal perspective.
I don't know. I hope not. I don't think so. I don't think that will happen. I don't hope that happens for Hong Kong. But it's just. I think after a year of protests and after a year of riots, they've kind of pushed the administration into a kind of a corner. And I think that's why you saw the national security bill. Like, I literally know so many friends in Hong Kong, born and raised in Hong Kong. They don't speak up against the protesters because it's not, it's dangerous, like we said before. They're literally cheering a national security bill, which is the weirdest thing ever. Like, who in their life grows up hoping for a good national security bill? Because, of course, it can be used for not so positive things in the future as well. But that's the point it's got to. And what are the other choices? After a year of rioting, after destroying subway systems, burning down shops, you've got two choices. You've got send in the military or try to intimidate people into saying, okay, stop this. And that's what they did with the national security bill. I hope it creates some reflection where people say, okay, you know what, we're just going to keep pushing it further and further downhill, where they start to reevaluate the situation, and nobody would ever consider creating a great firewall around Hong Kong. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that, but I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, we are on the same page here. Now, let's talk about business in China. You've been running your business with China for over 12 years. And in the past 6 years, you've been running the Taps Brewpub in Shenzhen as well. So talking about your business, what do you see has changed in the past 12 years in China when it comes to doing business in the country? It can be the environment, it can be, the consumer. What is your basically overview?
Well, so there's definitely a growing middle class and also an appreciation for kind of finer things. So, in my craft beer brew pub, it's obviously craft beer, which is quite different from commercial beer. And that's not only a case of beer. You're talking about kind of craft coffees, all of these kind of fine wines and stuff like that. People are looking for experiences or luxury products or something with a little bit more meaning. So I would say that's one of the biggest shifts I've noticed. People becoming a lot more experimental with these alternative products.
Is it difficult to do business in China? So setting up your own production, then setting up distribution, then doing marketing, then, really being in China, breathing China, and essentially, just going for it.
I mean, doing business anywhere, comes with its difficulties, and China will come with its own unique difficulties. It's definitely gotten easier and easier and more clear. And like there was with a lot of businesses, there's a lot of gray area. It's like, okay, well, what exactly are we supposed to do here? But things are getting written out really clearly here. If you want to open up a standalone brewery, all the policies and procedures, you need to have your own sewage treatment kind of or water output treatment on site. They're very strict about the environment here, despite popular belief. If you open up some sort of a food factory, they have automatic monitoring systems they put on your water outputs, and you register how much you're going to be piping out per month, how much water you're going to be treating per month. And if you go over that digital monitor automatically sends a notification to the government. Very, very high-tech solutions in that regard. So of course there are challenges, and things tend to change really quickly too. When the government wants to, and I think that comes with the fact that they build 20,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in 10 years. So when you're in a society that moves that fast, some policies and procedures or things that you need to change happen really quickly. I mean, you're running around like crazy trying to make it happen. When you don't finish by their deadline, they're usually pretty flexible too. Like they'll say, okay, they'll give you a few extra days to do whatever you've got to do to get up to standard. So unique challenges. I wouldn't necessarily say it's any more difficult than anywhere else, but it just comes with its own unique set of challenges. Of course, if there's a potential language barrier for somebody who doesn't speak any of the language, you're going to definitely need some local help as well. But yeah, more or less, that's kind of it.
That's beautiful. And what about COVID-19? COVID obviously has impacted, the consumer sentiment and the behavior all around the world. What have you seen happening in China? Are we back to normal, the new normal? What is the demand? Again, what's going on that front?
I think the new normal would be the best way to say it. There's, checks in place when you go into certain places on the subway. You still need to wear your mask and all that kind of stuff. The business is starting to get back to normal. It took a while to get back to normal, where people wanted to kind of actually go out to bars again. But more or less, it's kind of back to normal. I think you did have quite a lot of factories, though, a few factories who, because of the pause in production and now the global demand for products, because everybody's kind of slowed down. You've probably got quite a few factories that have laid off portions of their workers. But overall, I think it's getting back on track pretty nicely so far.
I've been speaking with JD just last week, and Jingdong has obviously throughout this COVID period, they've been pushing a lot of their fresh produce and, F&B, etc. And one of the best selling products was in fact beer. And that was very interesting because just like ice cream, and that was the insight introduced by the JD team, just like ice cream, Chinese people love eating it on the spot. So they don't basically buy ice cream and eat it at home, and they don't drink beer at home. So they drink it and consume it on the spot, and they don't really order it home. But throughout this COVID-19, people started ordering boxes, almost like Germany, boxes of beer for home to consume. So that was a very positive and interesting development in your particular industry.
Right. Yeah. I should jump on top of that opportunity.
Absolutely. Craft beer delivered to your home.
Our situation there is because everything's coming from a tap. We do takeaway, we do delivery, but it's really, in this kind of a situation, it's really kind of an on-site experience as well. But we're actually looking at getting our product bottled pretty soon, and then that's something we're going to tap into, because for sure the whole delivery, the great thing is that before this happened, they had a really great delivery infrastructure to begin with all these kinds of delivery companies and services, and this just took it to the next level. This really gave it a boost.
So walk us a little bit through this delivery experience, because it is truly quite incredible, and people very often in China expect instant delivery, which is happening within like 30 minutes or something, and a lot of people cannot order Deliveroo or Food Panda in that time and get their meal. But in China, literally, you can order medicine, you can order jeans, you can order like literally just almost anything that you want, and it will be at your doorstep within an hour for sure, and very often in big cities within half an hour. Same, are you seeing the same in Shenzhen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so when we do takeaway, so we've got these flip top bottles that we fill, and then the guy, somebody will come and pick it up and deliver it, and it's delivered pretty quickly. I mean, when I was at the park with my family, we took our badminton rackets and we forgot to take badminton birdies, and then so we used the Jindong Daojia, and we gave them our pin, and they delivered it within half an hour to our spot in the park.
In the park.
In the park. So it really is remarkable.
Yeah, imagine this, a couple of years from now, there will be little drones dropping whatever you ordered right there in the park, even faster in a couple of minutes. I mean, we're living in such a fast paced world.
Yeah.
When it comes to, your advice for businesses that are looking to do business in China, that are just starting out, what would you recommend them to do right now in 2020, for the next half a year, for the next year and a half? What would be your advice?
I mean, I would say it really that would be an industry specific kind of a thing. So in terms of opening and food and beverage related stuff, the best thing obviously would be starting to familiarize yourself with the policies and procedures, reaching out to other people. Also, with craft beer, we're quite lucky where the craft beer community is a very close knit, kind of tight community. Everybody kind of helps each other out. And it's kind of like the spirit of craft beer. That's why a lot of people got into it to begin with. They just enjoy life. They enjoy trying new flavors and, or doing collaborations with other brewmasters. So for my situation, it's quite unique. But, if you're working with a certain kind of a niche kind of a product, you might have the same opportunity as well to reach out or go to certain trade shows, networking, definitely just talking to other people doing the same thing.
And how crucial it is, you've mentioned that it is important to speak Chinese language in general, or to have somebody speaking Chinese language. How crucial do you feel it is when you're building a company in mainland China and having that network? How many of those entrepreneurs that will be in your network are Chinese? How crucial it is to really speak their language? Or are you going to get by with English?
I think it would definitely be a lot more difficult with English. I think if you only do speak English and you meet somebody who's in the same industry who's Chinese, a lot of the times, because society here is really open to foreigners in many ways. Sometimes they'll be happy to have, if they understand or can speak a little bit of English, to be able to talk to you and guide you through things. I noticed the same thing when I was building my brew pub, and I had to deal with kind of, the fire policy guys and when they're coming in. And when I speak to them in Chinese, I get a sudden, definitely a lot more appreciation from them, and a lot more kind of, I wouldn't say they do anything differently to help me, they still follow all the rules, obviously, but they're just a little bit more friendly, or, guide me through. So I'll give you an example. When I registered my brew pub for the two floors together, something like 250, 300 square meters. And so the fire police guy, he comes through, he does the inspection, make sure everything's right. I had to make a few changes, and then he went back to his office. And then afterwards, he gave me a call and said, listen, I think we should change something on this, because we put that it's 300 square meters or whatever it is, but we didn't say it was on 2 floors. So I'm going to modify this document. You got to come in and sign the change, because that way, if in the future fire police come through, it's very clearly written that both floors were inspected. And so, I don't know, maybe they would have done that for anybody, but I do feel like they were very pleased that there was a foreigner here who really is trying to learn, about society, taking the time to learn the language, instead of just somebody trying to come through and whatever, they
are taking definitely a lot more care, right? They want to make sure that you are successful. And that is probably another point when we talk about business in China. Right now, Chinese government, when previously it was really difficult to deal with them because they were more a hurdle that you need to overcome rather than help that you're ever going to receive. Right now, with the way they restructured that whole, I would say, incentive system for the government in a little bit of Singaporeish direction, we're seeing a lot of help coming from the government and supervisory boards. What do you feel?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look back at like 2008, when any Chinese person had to go, especially if it's a small hometown, back to the government office to do anything, they're talking down to you. It wasn't if right now was the same as it was in 2008, I wouldn't be as positive as I am about the Chinese government. But from that time to now, it has completely shifted where when you go into a government office, you feel like you need to be served by them, that they are there to serve you.
You are a customer.
Yeah, and this isn't just for foreigners. I'm talking about, like, for example, my friend who has to go back to Amway or something like that to do some sort of a document. The attitude is completely different, where the government knows that they're here to serve the people. So the change just in this last 10, 12 years is amazing, and definitely I'm seeing exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And this change happened because of incentives, or?
I think accountability. I think that in the West, if you don't like your mayor or you don't like whatever it is, you vote them out. But here, it kind of happens in the same way. If people are unhappy, the government takes note, and the government administrators, they get changed. They don't want complaints. They don't want complaints from ordinary people, because it's taken seriously. They've got systems in place here too, where people can log on and they can actually make official complaints about the government. So it's like on the most basic ground floor level, it is kind of functioning in a democracy in many kinds of ways, just not in the traditional Western ways, where these leaders have to rely on popularity contests to get votes, and which comes with a lot of risks and dangers
cost
as well.
And cost.
Yeah, costs. Sponsorships who are going to be, the sponsorships coming from certain people who are going to expect something in return after you're elected. I mean, if China did it that way, it would be a complete mess right now. So, of course, each system comes with its own risks. Each system comes with its own positives and negatives, but it's what's in place here right now is working pretty well.
Yeah, for the country. Daniel, thank you so much. It was so super insightful. I absolutely loved it. Guys, definitely follow Daniel Dumbrill on Twitter, on his YouTube channel. If you are in Shenzhen, definitely visit Taps Brewpub and say hi to Daniel. Guys, stay tuned for more China experts to come.